in today's episode?
It's been really interesting learning about AI being implemented. And I'm not talking about like machine learning models. I never thought I'd be involved in tech, to be honest. I don't think that any of the fraud platforms existed back then or rules engines, to be honest. Would you want to work a boring desk job that, didn't really excite your brain and excite any sort of passion inside of you? So we just opened up the House of Fraud. There is a group of us who have gotten together in order to start a consumer advocacy group around. It takes so long to build a credit score, and it takes a day for a fraudster to tank it. If you don't have those three things nailed down, you're not going to be a good leader. Nothing on the internet of how to report the fraud itself. Do it if you want an exciting career that doesn't get boring. Oftentimes, the crime rings are actually tied to human trafficking, which it's definitely going to be the educational piece for the actual consumers, the end users.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining me today for a new episode of the podcast A Journey into Fraud Prevention. I'm your host Ivan Prokofiev. New episode and new exciting guest. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate the episode on any platform such as Apple, Spotify or YouTube. And share the podcast in your network. It means a lot to me and allow me to invite more and more new guests. And most important, enjoy. Let's begin. Поехали. Hi Jeannie, how are you today?
Good, how are you, Ivan?
Very well, thank you for joining me today. It is a pleasure to invite you to this record episode. Could I ask you please introduce yourself to people who don't know you?
Sure. I'm Jeannie. I've been working in the fraud industry on the technology side for about 11 years now. Got my start in chargebacks and now have worked through biometrics, trust and safety, and data.
So amazing and so long in the industry. And I believe you're gonna simply ask on the next questions. Fraud prevention. What is fraud prevention for you?
That's a tangle. Fraud prevention is everything from just gut instinct to data itself. It really depends on the industry. There are nuances across every single different type of business. So fraud prevention essentially is fighting crime along your own rails of whatever that actually encompasses, whatever you're actually facing.
I like these phrases, fighting crimes, because it is exactly why we are here, why we are present in the industry.
Yeah, it's a crime.
If people are going to start to argue with you about kind of description of crimes and present you two options, the first one, the people say, I want to buy ticket plane and going to use coupon code to free check-in baggage. And I found this coupon code using some Telegram channels. Do you believe it's fraud or not?
Does it go against the policies of the company?
I don't think so if it's still available. Let's simplify the case. So for example, I'm going right now, I open any airlines and I find the right ticket for myself and they ask me is there any coupons code. And I'm going to open Telegram and find out some codes that give me a free check-in baggage. From one perspective, I didn't get this coupon to myself via any communication channels. However, I managed to find this one. So is it a crime or not?
It depends. Is the code an internal employee discount code that's been released on Telegram? Therefore, the employee would be committing the policy abuse? Or is this a general coupon code that happens to be floating on a different website that was then shared on Telegram, released by the company for consumers? Then no, it's not a crime.
Wow. It was a simple question. You just really... It's become very questionable for me when I ask these questions. Okay, so if it's general one, let's say they created the code for the whole year that's calling Airlines 1 to 3. So we are good now. So everyone happy because they posted it and they expected it's going to be promote themselves. But if I'm as employee of the company, for some reasons, posted it somewhere and it started using globally, this is a crime because someone actually used it and this has become an fraud abuse. That makes sense.
Internal policy abuse is different than a global code that's being shared. If you look at Honey or the Capital One apps, they scour the web and scrub it to find codes. that are released by companies to then add to your purchase. And those are completely legitimate extensions that companies actually use to promote their businesses.
That's totally makes sense. And you mentioned you in fraud industry for already 11 years, and
Mhm.
how it's changed so far, and where it's going actually.
It's been really interesting learning about AI being implemented. And I'm not talking about like machine learning models, our basic machine learning models that we have in all of our models today and a lot of the fraud platforms. There's some interesting stuff that I think we're going to see from some of the orchestration platforms that are incorporating AI in order to look back on historical data of a merchant that they have on board and say, hey, listen, we're seeing a rise in coupon abuse. So here's a way to mitigate it rather than having to go through a lengthy RFP or have your own data scientist take a look at it and find out the fraud trends. The AI will be able to identify those trends early on in order to mitigate them sooner.
So it's already like I'm quite surprised that everyone adopts so quickly AI functionality because I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, about 1 year, 1.5 year when it's everything started and everyone started crazy out loud to say AI gonna kill all of us and it's gonna be a lot of layoffs. And right now we already have some functionalities that people like using on daily basis to apply some new mechanism or new functionality on their sites.
Mhm.
Do you see it's going to be used a lot during this year, or we going to expect something even bigger come up nearby, AI 2.0, I don't know, something like that?
It depends on the industry again. There's already massive advancements. Google released their AI 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, that some see as putting ChatGPT under the bus. It's just able to do things such as it can recognize images, it can recognize colors. So it's the next generation of AI. It's not just evaluating text, it's actually evaluating images themselves. And then being able to expound off of that intelligently. I don't know exactly how that would end up applying to fraud in our case, but it's interesting to see how quickly things have advanced just since ChatGPT was released.
I believe I might be wrong. It's plenty of companies right now in the industry who allow you to identify is it fake document or not, like any kind of IDs. I
Yeah.
believe they're gonna might use a lot of that one because the color functions is very crucial for this kind of products. They realized if it's normal wise how when you do a picture, if it's like real picture or someone just like builds this functionality. I might be wrong, it's only my outloud of ideas of the new functionality presented by Google.
I can totally see that being utilized in order to identify fake pictures and fake IDs or fake profiles on various social media sites. The scary thing is the bias, though, because maybe it's being utilized in order to identify. And a lot of times in the AI, the synthetic pictures, it will have disproportionate ears or, not a perfectly asymmetrical face, and not all humans have perfect symmetry. So therefore, that's going to be creating a bias against anybody with deformities, scars, things like that, that might create some sort of bias and create a lot of false positives. I could see that happening.
And I see how you like really exciting when we're speaking about this AI functionality because it's like most of the people they not really like this topic because they started to raise concerns about it. But I see you
Mhm.
kind of I don't know adopt this functionality in your maybe work or maybe in some areas where you can like do something. So it's really cool that you kind of presenting from the way that it's going to be very useful if you know how to use this one.
Yeah, and there's always risk with all new technology. I mean, since the inception of the telephone or lights, there's been some sort of risk involved with injury or things like that. It's just setting up the protocols and the regulations in order to hold people accountable when using that technology to not create bias.
That's cool. So I want to jump on next questions. I'm really excited because I want to hear your journey. Why 11 years ago you decided to join fraud prevention? What was your motivation? Who forced you? Or who maybe you forced someone who forced you afterwards to join it?
I never thought I'd be involved in tech, to be honest. I was a merchant. I was running a small but high-end spa in South Beach, Miami, and I ran across every single type of fraud possible. I'm talking about fake money, employee collusion, just everything. A chargeback. I remember the first day I got my first chargeback, and I think it came through a fax machine actually.
Wow.
And I had to figure out how to fight what a chargeback was, how to fight a chargeback, and then I made the decision to start an e-commerce shop for the spa in order to cater to our European clients who would come and stay for half the year in South Beach and then fly back home. And they really liked our skincare line, to be able to provide products to them. And that's when all of a sudden, I'm getting hit with fake orders and then chargebacks and things like that. And so I just ran the gambit of having every single type of fraud possible hit me at that spa. So when I saw this job opening in my hometown that was for a chargeback company, I was super intrigued, and I went in and I interviewed and got the position and just fell in love with fighting against friendly fraud chargebacks.
If we take as example all your knowledge in the fraud right now and opportunity to come back to the time when you start to open e-commerce options of your business, are you going it the same way, or you start to building some complex functionality for e-commerce merchant to make sure it's not going to be chargebacks?
I don't think that any of the fraud platforms existed back then, or rules engines, to be honest. If they did, 100%, I would have instituted a rules engine and a fraud matrix that included a consortium that I could compare to other buyer data. But I don't think that existed back then. I mean, it was the Wild West. You kind of just had to bite the bullet and fight the chargebacks on your own. I don't even think the chargeback companies existed back whenever I ran that spa to help you know how to fight the chargebacks themselves. So yeah, I would have an registration platform. I would have a fraud platform. I would have a consortium. I would have everything if I could go back.
Yeah, I'm just actually thinking for a second, like 11 years ago, because I started my career about the same time, and my first position was in the bank back in Russia, and we had, let's call it rule engine, but generally speaking, it was simple SQL that's running on daily basis, getting us tickets to review, or list of orders that we review and call our customers. I don't believe I heard about anything that someone posted functionality from merchant side. So merchant really were blind for a couple of years until they start to realize they can do something on their side to preventing fraud.
Mm-hmm.
How you find this industry so far? What still motivate you to stay up to date and not jumping away from fraud prevention area?
Oh, it'd be so boring. I've had friends who work in cloud services, and no, I mean, this is constant college. You're just constantly having to learn about the new technology that comes out. It's just exciting. It's never boring.
Amazing answer. I don't know. It is really amazing answer because it's explained your, first of all, your motivation, and secondary that you are still the person who really want to continue learn something and maybe apply this knowledge, and not only just sitting and apply the same methodology day over the year. Yeah.
Oh, totally. I mean, would you want to work a boring desk job that, didn't really excite your brain and excite any sort of passion inside of you?
I thought about that one, but let's put it another way. If someone come to you tomorrow and say, we raise your current pay 5 times, but you need to do, just come every day to the office, sitting on the desk and typing something. You're not going to go in this one.
No. I am a person who needs to be intellectually stimulated or I die. I am not a happy person.
I mean, it's amazing. It's I know you're supposed to be really proud about that one, and because unfortunately, in the world, it's a lot of the people who just sitting in the same type of activity for a long time. So
I think people get comfortable and are afraid of change, and therefore they're too afraid to go out and explore and find what their passion is. You know, they went to college, they're working in the field that they went to college for, and it's stable enough to bring them comfort, but not any joy. So they just kind of settle.
yeah, I don't believe we're going to resolve here today some worldwide problems, but I'm happy to hear your opinion about that one. And about your current role, can you share a bit what you're currently doing and maybe what you're focusing on and what you try to achieve?
So there are a few side projects that I'm working on with some other fraud fighters. We just opened up the House of Fraud, which, as a founding member, is basically a group of the top people in the thought leadership of the fraud industry coming together and then bringing in more merchants and more people on the technical side in order to really create a hive mind to keep track of trends, fraud trends that are emerging within the markets, and also share ideas on how to mitigate those risks for each different vertical. So it's really an amazing group of very bright people that I really admire that are just breaking down the industry secrets, because everybody tries to just keep their little fraud fighting secrets to themselves in the past decade, and instead come together in order to help us all fight crime as an organization, since we don't really have a lot of backing from the state or federal police departments and have to rely
Yeah,
on each other.
I heard about this one. Hi to Brian. If he listened, he promised he listened every episode. I spoke with him recently. So, hi, Brian. If you listen this one, message me in DM in LinkedIn and say that you heard this one. It's example how far he listened usually. So you try to create the platform for the merchants and probably not for the merchants, so for everyone who passionate about fraud,
Mhm.
and gives them opportunity like ask like sensitive questions without afraid
Mhm.
to like share some information. Am I summarize it right?
Yeah, and then it's also a really great resource for anybody who's in the job market in the fraud industry. A lot of us have openings at our current companies or are looking for other employees in order to bolster up our teams. So it's a great job resource as well, just to be able to go and ask, how can I bump up my resume? How can I improve this in order to get an analyst job or a TNS job? What does it require? What certification should I go after in the fraud industry that's going to be most valuable to my career? A lot of career advice, as well as the fraud mitigation advice.
That's amazing. I mean, I heard about a lot of these things about House of Fraud, however, not about career advices. It's
Mhm.
great. I mean, for me, if someone have something a couple of years ago when I started really exploring career, it's gonna be very useful. And even right now, I'm just like probably I don't know need to speak with my wife probably about my future steps in the career. Do you have any other side projects you want to share with us?
There is a group of us who have gotten together in order to start a consumer advocacy group around data privacy and holding accountable and finding out what kind of laws and regulations are currently in place in the digital landscape to protect consumers themselves from being victims of fraud through the channels of purchasing on the internet. So that's a project we're kicking off this year. We're currently in the R&D phase of understanding the laws and regulations, because everything was pretty much put in place when it comes to putting PII down on paper. And there's not really, there doesn't seem to be a lot of regulation in place to protect the consumers themselves and also give them the information that they need of after they become a victim of fraud. What do I do next? How do I handle this? Who do I contact? And as a previous victim of fraud myself, I had the back knowledge from the industry of how to go about correcting my credit score after being a victim of fraud, or to get a false loan off of my credit report. But most people in the general public, don't know what kind of scams are out there. Hence, they fall easily to it. There's no educational space for that. And what to do after you become a victim of fraud so that it doesn't continue to harm your financial future or credit future. So we're putting together that sort of group.
That's unbelievable project. And I believe you with people who just going to build this functionality and advocacy company, you like really, I don't know, try to resolve one of the biggest issue I see right now in worldwide. That people don't know what to do if something happens with them, and unfortunately, a lot of people like facing this problem. I heard about that project from someone else, and it's gonna be episode with Elena in end of January. So she briefly share something about that project as well, and I just repeat myself that I'm really looking forward to see what you're gonna put in place, because for me it's much more interesting rather than most of charity organizations, because you actually try to help people to resolve the problem and not only collect money to resolve that kind of issue. Because I don't know, for people who had issue with the fraud, and it's a lot of them, they not only like lost the money in some instances, they lost opportunity to do something in their life, on day-to-day life. I don't know, I don't have much knowledge about states markets and how it works there, but I heard if credit score really bad, you're not able to do anything.
And that's the scary thing. If you're a victim of fraud and it tanks your credit score, it takes so long to build a credit score, and it takes a day for a fraudster to tank it. That's unfair to the consumer, that they have to then spend another 5 years rebuilding their credit score, which they miss out on opportunities of, getting a house, moving to a better school district for their kids, possibly a job is even impacted by your credit score in America.
You're doing such a great project for the world, and not only for fighting industry, for the world as well. I really want to jump on your manager experience, because I saw you have a really distinct experience as a manager or director in different roles. The question is how to become manager or director or VP in fraud fighting industry. What skills are necessary? And maybe you can give a bit of advice for people who right now, I don't know, is individual contributors sitting there somewhere, try to find a way how to become a manager.
Okay, so a little clarity on the titles at my job. They're a little skewed. I am an individual contributor despite my title, but also a teammate of a very dynamic team. I have been a manager in the past, so I can speak to that with previous roles. And really, it's understanding your industry. There's two parts to it. There's the people part and the business part. In the fraud industry, if you want to get ahead, you've got to understand what's coming with technology. You've got to understand your competitive landscape, and you've got to understand your go-to-market strategy. If you don't have those three things nailed down, you're not going to be a good leader, because it's constantly dynamic and ever-changing very, very quickly. And you have to do your homework and stay on top of it. If you're not spending, say, 2 to 3 hours every single week on your own time studying the industry, you're going to fall behind. And therefore, your team's going to fall behind, because you're the advisor of that team. From a people perspective, always lead with empathy. A good leader leads with empathy and understanding. It's not all about the metrics and the numbers. It's about the roadblocks that are put in place through the bureaucracy of the company. And you have to understand that if your employees are not performing at their top accolades, what's causing that? Is there something hindering your team from being top performers? And then remove those hurdles so that a way they can do their jobs, because everybody wants to do their job really well. People don't stay in a job for more than a year if they don't want to do well.
And from the perspective of your experience, are you more enjoy to be a manager or individual contributor?
Currently with life, individual contributor.
Because something you are doing, you see the fast response, or because I know speaking, don't get me wrong, for everyone who listens to this one, sometimes manager it's really the work when you need to sit and listen, and not a lot of people really like this one. What do you believe the main reason why you want to be right now individual contributors? Because the current role, or because you prefer to like fast response?
I do prefer the fast response, but I also prefer the way that it currently allows me to really have the independence to have my side projects, work cross-functionally with various different teams. The leaders don't get a lot of face time with the actual clients themselves, so they're not able to problem solve for them. And I like that aspect of sitting down with one of my clients and deep diving into their data and into their day-to-day issues and what they're seeing, and helping them to problem solve their actual fraud situations.
Lovely. And coming back to that speed touch, your company is going to be open soon. Have you ever been a victim of fraud?
Yeah.
Any like story you want to share? If you don't, no pressure here.
So right at the beginning of the pandemic was the second time I've been a victim of fraud. And I got an alert because I have signed up for every single credit reporting alert program out there, that there was a credit check. And so I took a look, and somebody had taken out a PPP loan in my name. So immediately I am on it, and I am looking up what PPP loans are, and what business this was associated with, because I didn't own a business at the time, so it wasn't associated with any of my past businesses. And I tried to find a customer service number for the U.S. government for PPP loans. Nothing on the internet of how to report the fraud itself. There was nothing on the internet. So my recourse is I took to LinkedIn, and I looked up anybody in the government offices that had to do with PPP loans, and immediately started messaging them frantically until somebody paid attention to me and finally got back to me and removed it before the money was dispersed to the fraudster. But that's what I mean. Like, consumers don't know how to handle if they see loan fraud on their credit report. There's not anything on Google in order to contact somebody and speak to a live human to report it.
This is what I hate about like in general changes in the world. I remember like 7 years ago, any company, if you open contact us, they have a form, they have phone number or email address. You can send over questions and you get some replies or start communication. Nowadays, if your internet die and you need to call someone to pass these robot questions, you need to spend like 40 minutes on the call and make sure you enter the right answers. Otherwise, you hear "Thank you for your answer" and hang out and about this one.
It is atrocious customer service for anybody who is going through fraud. Another situation is somebody had used my social security number to take out a credit card with me as the co-signer. Not once did that credit card company ever send me a piece of mail, call me, anything. And that apparently that credit card this is whenever I was in my early 20s, was on my credit report for a few years, and I didn't know it existed. And that credit card company never got my authorization to co-sign for that credit card. I never got a call saying, hey, somebody has submitted you as a co-signer for a credit card for a line of credit. Do you accept? I never got a piece of mail. nothing. And whenever I tried to shut down that credit card, they wanted me to pay the outstanding balance to shut it down.
I don't know how even to respond to this one, because I have like angry emotions to answer on this one, but it's crazy. And specifically, I still don't understand how it's possible to open something without authorized. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Probably I need to going to take a mortgage and ask for someone, I don't know, some of existing like presidents to say he's gonna be my referral. If you have
Yeah.
any questions, just call it.
Barack Obama is going to co-sign for my loan.
Yeah, it's gonna be amazing. That's crazy. I know. I believe we have one question, so I'm gonna skip this one because you're definitely gonna recommend joint fraud prevention because it is such an um, changing landscape of the knowledge and always dynamic. But just to double check, if someone asks you tomorrow, who in early stage of looking for a job, like just in the last year of university, contact you, say, I'm thinking about like join fraud fighting area. What gonna be your response?
Do it if you want an exciting career that doesn't get boring. I mean, it's only going to evolve from here. It's going to become more of, I think, criminal justice sort of job as we start to really formulate ways of like identifying crime rings and things like that. So if you have an interest in helping the world and you like data, definitely consider this a career.
Greatest advice. And I have one question that's actually from the Brian. Once again, hi Brian. What that's one fraud nightmare case you just can't shake from your memory?
I think any of them that have to actually do with human trafficking really hurts my heart. And I don't think a lot of people realize that, but there's a lot of sectors of the e-commerce business that are actually tied to human trafficking. So while the fraud may on a high level just seem like somebody trying to game the system to get a free night stay somewhere at a hotel or, get a hold of a car, things like that, oftentimes the crime rings are actually tied to human trafficking, which shows you kind of get an insider look of how big that industry is in the United States, and that's really scary.
Yeah, all these kind of things. When you look some news or you read something, I know sometimes I just like try to remind myself it's 2024. I just for some reasons I need to remind this for this quite often for the past since pandemic. I still just need every year to say, it's 2024. It's supposed to be it resolved soon, but when you read it once again, you feel it's not. It's somewhere
Yeah.
like
It's really sad. And it's not just that we're fighting like these low level fraudsters that are stealing a free pizza. We're literally protecting the internet from human traffickers and people who are, purchasing guns and, to commit violent acts. And that's the real root of it all. Like, yeah, somebody steals a pizza, it's horrible, but to know that we're trying to protect the internet from these criminals getting a hold, utilizing the internet to get a hold or to commit even more violent acts on the back end, that's what really keeps me up at night and gets me up in the morning.
And I probably have last questions. If you have ability right now to change one thing in the industry, what is going to be?
Oh, it's definitely going to be the educational piece for the actual consumers, the end users. That's the piece that I think that's really, really missing in the whole ecosystem. We've put a lot of good technology in place to protect the businesses, but we have not put anything in place to educate the public themselves from becoming victims, the end users.
Education is very important, and specifically not only just like some degree, it's actually knowledge of how to resolve the problem. It reminds me of one of the you might see this tweet. It's somewhere around to say Google, Apple, Facebook, the way how they create the images or create the audio without interaction from the people, but they still don't have any products to help people to fill the tax form.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you have a platform that is rife with fraud, do you not have a social responsibility to start educating your base to protect them? And I'm not talking about putting something up on the internet that's attached to another page on your webpage stating, if you incur this fraud, do this. No, there needs to be, I think, more actual media advocacy as to fraud risks that consumers can come across. Something on general channels, like, for instance, let's say these larger corporations, maybe they should be taking out actual ads on YouTube or any of the streaming sites that is a 2-minute video of a scam that is currently popular to educate the public. It also promotes their brand, it shows that they care, and it shows that they're trying to protect their user base.
Yeah, it's no like entrepreneurs in social networks, like I know TikTok, Instagram, who just like spend 2 minutes to say about that kind of problem. They most of the time try to sell the products, but I can't recall any of the advertising that happens to say, oh, when you I know cashed out money from ATM, just like hide with your right or left hands the pin code that you enter. It might not resolve all your problems, but reduce the option that someone just looking across your shoulder and see what you enter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jeannie, thank you so much. It was actually a roller coaster of answers, not roller coaster of answers of my emotions. It is great replies and the great stories. I'm really enjoying this one. And once again, it's a pleasure that you find the time in your schedule to join me today. I learn a lot. This is what the main things why keeping this podcast, because I'm learning a lot from this. And I hope the people who also listens come up some knowledge from that as well.
Thank you, Ivan, for inviting me. This was fun.
That's great. And I'm gonna say my favorite word at the end of each episode, which is cut.